Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. It seems like everyone's been freaking out all day about the continuing resolution bill that's supposed to fund the federal government for the next year. You know, the thing they pass every single, usually September, October, sometimes December things, right? To keep funding the federal government. So anyway, this has been an ongoing thing. It's been happening for a while to continue to fund the federal government so that everything that the government runs can continue to be funded, including the military, infrastructure, you know, things like that. And everyone's been freaking out about it. It appears that it is dead on arrival right now because currently it does not have enough support to make it through a vote. And there's been people freaking out all over every social media app you can imagine about it all day long. But I figured that instead of looking at what they're saying, and because a lot of these people that are talking about it and posting about it aren't actually posting screenshots or reading it to, some people are, and those people are doing a good job because then you can actually see for yourself like what is actually in the bill, what the bill says, so that way you're not just like having to take their word for it without having to do some due diligence. So I figured we could go through a little bit, just some bits and pieces of it, and see just a few examples of the things that were in this omnibus bill, which is what it is. It's an omnibus bill because it's supposed to cover a wide swath of tons of things that are not necessarily, you know, pertinent to funding the federal government necessarily, but I think you might find it interesting. I'm literally just going to read right out of the bill. I'm going to have it displayed on the screen right over here, so that way you can see for yourself, and then you guys can make your decision on how you feel about this bill afterwards. So let's get right into it. HR 10445, making further continuing appropriations for the fiscal year ending in September 30th of 2025 to basically fund the government for a full year. December 17th of 2024, Mr. Cole for himself and Mr. Edwards introduced the following bill, which was referred to the Committee on Appropriations in addition to the committees on the Budget and Ways and Means for a period to be subsequently determined by the Speaker, in each case for consideration of such provisions as fall within the jurisdiction of the committee concerned. So let's look at some of this stuff, shall we? Let's look at page 23. Disaster Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act. It's Department of Agricultural Programs. Yeah, I don't know if that necessarily... Okay, so it's 30 billion there, another 2 billion there, but this all looks like it's for agriculture because it's talking about to remain available until expended for necessary expenses related to the losses of revenue, quality, or production of crops, including milk, on-farm stored commodities, crops prevented from planting and harvested adulterated wine grapes, trees, bushes, vines as a consequence of droughts, wildfires, hurricanes, floods, derechos, excessive heat, tornadoes, winter storms, freeze, including a polar vortex, smoke exposure, and excessive moisture occurring in calendar years 2023 and 2024 under such terms and conditions as determined by the Secretary of Agriculture, referred to in this title as Secretary. So it's just talking about like food production, livestock, things like that. It's not talking about like just people that lost their homes. See, does it say anything about that down the road? Economic assistance. Okay, so that might be it. 10 billion is probably for plain economic assistance. It doesn't say anything about agriculture in that piece. Block grants. This is in regards to timber, crops, livestock losses. Inspector General getting funded to oversee it. Additional amount for buildings and facilities, $42,500,000 for agricultural purposes. Farm production and conservation programs, rural development. Yeah, it's not really saying anything about just the regular people affected by Hurricane Helene. Let's see, we got $1,510,000,000 to remain available until expended for public works and economic development. For economic adjustment assistance related to flood mitigation, disaster relief, long-term recovery, restoration. Okay, so that's good. That's all good stuff. Well, this is interesting. The Secretary shall use $3 million to carry out regular testing for the purposes of verifying and validating the methodology and protocols of the inspection of molasses at any United States ports of entry, including whether the molasses meets each statutory requirement without the use of additives or blending, relevant definitional explanatory notes, and each property typical of molasses in the United States as directed in Senate Report 118 TAC 193. Interesting. And Pay-as-you-go Act. Okay, so let's keep going here. Nationwide Consumer and Fuel Retailer Choice Act of 2024. This section may be cited as the Nationwide Consumer and Fuel Retailer Choice Act of 2024. Ethanol waiver. The fuel or fuel additive has been granted a waiver under subparagraph and meets all the conditions of that waiver, other than any limitation of the waiver with respect to the read vapor pressure of the fuel or fuel additive. What they're talking about here is ethanol being added to gasoline. And essentially what they're saying is they're going to allow, instead of 10%, allow up to 15% ethanol in regular gas at the pump. Foreign Affairs, Section 301 Global Engagement Center Extension. Section 1287J of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2017 is amended by striking on the date that is 8 years after the date of the enactment of this act and inserting on the date that is 9 years after the date of the enactment of this act. What's Section 1287J of the National Defense Authorization Act for 20? All right, so if you go back to the National Defense Authorization Act of 2017 and you look at Section 1287, which talks about the Global Engagement Center, it says, establishment, in general, not later than 180 days after the date of the enactment of this act, the Secretary of State, in coordination with the Secretary of Defense and the heads of other relevant federal departments and agencies, shall establish within the Department of State a global engagement center. Purpose. The purpose of this center shall be to lead, synchronize, and coordinate efforts of the federal government to recognize, understand, expose, and counter foreign, state, and non-state propaganda and disinformation efforts aimed at undermining United States national security interests. Functions. The center shall carry out the following functions: integrate interagency and international efforts to track and evaluate counterfactual narratives abroad that threaten the national security interests of the United States and the United States allies and partner nations. 2. Analyze relevant information, data analysis, and analytics from United States government agencies, United States allies and partner nations, think tanks, academic institutions, civil society groups, and other non-governmental organizations. 3. As needed, support the development and dissemination of fact-based narratives and analysis to counter propaganda and disinformation directed at the United States and the United States allies and partner nations. 4. Identify current and emerging trends in foreign propaganda and disinformation in order to coordinate and shape the development of tactics, techniques, and procedures to expose and refute foreign misinformation and disinformation and proactively promote fact-based narratives and policies to audiences outside of the United States. 5. Facilitate the use of a wide range of technologies and techniques by sharing the expertise among federal departments and agencies, seeking expertise from external sources, and implementing best practices. 6. Identify gaps in United States capabilities in areas relevant to the purpose of the center and recommend necessary enhancements or changes. 7. Identify the countries and populations most susceptible to propaganda and disinformation based on information provided by appropriate interagency entities. 8. Administer the Information Access Fund established pursuant to subsection F. 9. Coordinate with United States allies and partner nations in order to amplify the center's efforts and avoid duplication. 10. Maintain, collect, use, and disseminate records, as such term is defined in section 552 alpha, for research and data analysis of foreign, state, and non-state propaganda and disinformation efforts and communications related to public diplomacy efforts intended for foreign audiences. Such research and data analysis shall be reasonably tailored to meet the purposes of this paragraph and shall be carried out with due regard for privacy and civil liberties, guidance, and oversight. Bro, they basically are just talking about how on the date that is 8 years after the date, so they're extending it for a year is what they would want to do with this. But that's a lot. That's wild. Okay, anyway, another one that a lot of people were freaking about is this section underneath the Title 10 miscellaneous. And underneath that, I think the thing that people were freaking out about was under section 1002, where it talks about any member of Congress may elect to enroll in a health benefits plan offered through the DC Small Business Health Options Program created under the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, and if so enrolled, shall receive government contributions under this section. So they were saying that members of Congress were like exempt from having to enroll in the Affordable Care Act, which everybody always calls Obamacare. But I think that they were already exempt from having to enroll in the Affordable Care Act, from what I remember, because when they first passed it, I'm pretty sure they made Congress, like all of Congress, exempt from having to enroll in it. Like everyone else had to enroll in the Affordable Care Act when it was first passed in 2008, 9, or 10. I can't remember. It's one of those years. It might have been 2010. I remember when it passed. I was in the gym. I was watching it on TV, and I was like, but anyway, let's moving on. Individual with barrier to employment of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. They're amending a paragraph to say justice involved individuals, or striking homeless individuals and changing it to individuals experiencing homelessness, meaning in parentheses, meaning homeless individuals. Why did they even put that in there? Like, what a waste of space. Why did you even put that in there? By striking homeless children and all that follows through, define and inserting youth experiencing homelessness, meaning homeless children or youth. Like, why are we playing word semantics when you're just you just need to make a bill? Like, that's confusing. Opportunity youth. We're just playing word salad here, or word bingo. Let's see. Look at this. All right. Oh, they're getting rid of low-skilled adults and inserting adults with foundational skill needs. Just changing the way that you're saying stuff. Like, I don't know why. I don't know why we're doing this. I don't know how you would read this before voting on it. I don't have the time for it. I know you don't have the time for it. Justice-involved individual. The term justice-involved individual means any individual who has been adjudicated delinquent or convicted of a crime and imprisoned under federal or state law. Oh, they're getting rid of the phrase criminal offenders and inserting justice-involved individuals. Okay. Anyway, there's too much. This is too much for me to like read a large swath. To summarize, there's about $380 billion in expenses to keep the federal government open until March 14th of 2025. I know right now the farm bill that they're trying to renew with this would be $130 billion. They have about $100 billion of disaster relief in here, about $10 billion for stimulus for farmers. They want to replace the Francis Scott Key Bridge, which would cost $8 billion. Yeah. Point is this thing is, there's so much stuff in here that doesn't necessarily need to be in there to keep the federal government funded. I think it'd be easier to just stick with like, well, I don't know. I'm not a legislator. I think that anything that's omnibus is super. I think somebody was saying like any spending bill should be less than 10 pages. If it's more than 10 pages, then it's nonsense. But I don't know. I don't remember who said that. I think that you should be able to sit down and read the entire bill in less than 15 minutes. And then this way you can know personally what's in the bill. Because folks in Congress don't have a lot of time. They're very busy. Like each person in Congress, if they were doing like the right thing, you would want to read the entire bill. I don't want to read this entire bill. It's 1,500 pages long, man. It's like 1,547. And a lot of it's very wordy and thick. Like, I don't have enough saliva to read it all to you. You know what I'm saying? I think one of the keys to success in life in general is simplifying it. And I think simplifying your spending bills could probably help too. I don't know. Has anyone here read it? Let me know in the comments, please. If you've read all 1,547 pages of this thing, let me know. And if there's anything you read in here that was wildly outlandish, that was just completely off the wall, that you'd like to share with the rest of us, let us know in the comments as well, because I might have missed something because I didn't read the entire thing. And I've already seen a lot of like nutty stuff in here that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with keeping the government open. So yeah, let everyone know. And like I said, I think this thing's dead on arrival already. They've already pretty much like said, yeah, we're not gonna vote this thing. It's just not gonna pass. So not in its current state. So it's going to have to get refined significantly, and it'll hopefully get trimmed down to less than 100 pages, I hope. And maybe then they can find a way to get it through to fund the federal government. But anyway, we'll see you in the next video.